This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have some bombshell news here. The North Carolina Supreme Court blocked the certification of the Supreme Court election where Democrat Allison Riggs won her race. What the hell is going on here?
This is the most undercovered story in America today. The Republican Party of North Carolina is in the process of stealing, and I say that word intentionally. They are in the process of trying to steal a state Supreme Court election in the state of North Carolina. As you point out, there was a full campaign between two candidates, one Democrat, one Republican. They run on partisan bases in North Carolina for state Supreme Court. And it was a very close election. At the end of the counting, Allison Riggs, the Democrat, won. Okay. The Republican then sought a recount. There was a recount. Allison Riggs won. There was then a second sort of partial recount. I won't bore you with all the details here. She won again. Okay, so by the time we get to where we are, she has won the count, recount, and recount again. The Republican candidate, and backed by the Republican Party, has launched an effort to try to throw out not a few hundred votes. You know, the margin between the two candidates is only a little less than 750 votes, but they're not trying to throw out 751 or, you know, whatever the margin is. They're trying to throw out more than 60,000 votes. 60,000 votes. They want to disenfranchise people who already cast their ballot. And they want to do this because, number one, it will win them this race. But number two, they will have accomplished something that even Donald Trump couldn't accomplish in 2020, which is to throw out tens of thousands of lawful votes to make a point that election denialism is still alive and they win the election. And where the hell is the legacy media on this one? Where are they on this? Because what has happened is that the state Supreme Court has halted certification of the election while it consider this preposterous challenge to the outcome of this election.
What is the basis for the state Supreme Court to even take up arguments here? Like, don't you have to have some legal basis grounded in some semblance of fact to even be able to begin the process of hearing arguments? Why wouldn't they just throw this thing away? I mean, you just mentioned all of the instances in which Allison Riggs won every semblance of a recount and an audit every step of the way. So what is the basis for the highest court in the land then to have doubt cast on the outcome?
Oh, I mean, there's more that Allison Riggs won. These challenges, these 60,000 challenges, which are just a Hail Mary. It is disenfranchising voters who did nothing wrong. Okay. Those challenges were heard by the State Board of Elections and they were dismissed there. Some of them were sent to the counties and they were dismissed there. Right. So by the time we wind up where we are, these challenges they were not good challenges to begin with, but they have been dismissed. And the Republican Party backing this candidate think that because they can bring it to a partisan Supreme Court. And you and I have talked about the North Carolina Supreme Court before, right? It is a partisan Supreme Court. It's not just that it's partisan in that it is elected partisan, but, you know, let's be honest, it's got a pretty conservative, pretty partisan composition. And they just think that if they skip over the trial courts, skip over the courts of appeals, they just bring it straight to the state Supreme Court, that they'll get what they want. And what they have been doing is fighting having this case heard in federal court, even though there are real federal issues here to disenfranchising this. Why? Because they don't even want Republican appointees. They don't even want Trump appointed federal judges hearing this case. They just want it heard by the state Supreme Court. And so the state Supreme Court has put a hold on certification so that they can hear this emergency petition over the objection of two of the members of the state Supreme Court, one Democrat and one actually a very conservative Republican, who himself, even though he normally is in the majority on conservative issues, finds this objectionable.
Right. Deigns to acknowledge objective reality that when you lose the election, that the other person who actually won the election should become the winner. So I guess
and that it's fundamentally dangerous. It's just fundamentally dangerous if you have a system where free and fair elections are just sort of set aside because the courts can do this. And I gotta say again how unusual this is. In 2020, we all celebrated the fact that Trump judges, conservative Supreme Courts, the Wisconsin Supreme Court was a very conservative state Supreme Court at the time. and it rejected efforts to throw out tens of thousands of ballots and flip the election results. Everyone came out of 2020, at least everyone except for the election deniers came out of 2020 and said, you know what, this showed that the courts work, right? Yeah. Even the conservative U.S. Supreme Court didn't give Trump what he wanted. But here we are, we're on the precipice of this, and the legacy media, with a few exceptions, is just not paying attention to this.
Well, to go back to my previous question, in terms of the basis for the state Supreme Court to take this up, is there just an acknowledgement here that there is no basis other than the fact that they can and so they will?
I mean, what I think they would say, what they have said, is, look, these challenges have been raised. They've sought state Supreme Court review. The certification is upon us. Certification would be happening, right now. And so we simply need to block certification while we can consider the case. And we're not prejudging that we're going to finally block it in the end. We're just temporarily blocking it so that we can consider this case. And this is the kind of stuff you and I talk about, and you and Glenn talk about, all the time, about what the U.S. Supreme Court does. They're like, well, we're just taking the reasonable step in the meantime. But the fact is, once you've blocked certification, you have changed the election system, right? You have changed the system. It is like when Donald Trump, back in 2020 would be like, look, just delay, just send it back to the states, just let there be more, like, that's the game that you play when you're trying to engage in election denialism.
Right. And by the way, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then by virtue of changing that narrative, that leads a whole lot of people, a whole half the people in this country, to believe that there is a basis for them to do that, just by virtue of the fact that they are now taking the first steps toward doing exactly that. And so everybody in right-wing media will then recognize or presume, by virtue of certification being delayed, that it lends credence to these bogus claims by Republicans that there was indeed some nefarious activity happening in the North Carolina State Supreme Court election where there exists none. But this is them handing them exactly what they want. This is when Donald Trump asked I believe the Deputy Attorney General, if I'm not mistaken, just say that there was fraud and leave the rest to me and Republican congressmen. Right. This is for that exact reason. This is the exact same thing.
That's right, because it creates this sense among people, well, there must be something going on. I mean, after all, the state Supreme Court blocked certification. There must be something serious. There must be some serious problem. And, at the same time, it was only a few weeks ago or a month or so ago that in Pennsylvania, the Republicans were chastising Bob Casey, senator, in a very close election, for even wanting to wait for all the ballots to be counted. I mean, forget about certification or recounts. They were like, you haven't conceded. And he's like, but they haven't finished counting all the ballots in Philadelphia. And they're like, you're an election denier. How dare you even want all the ballots to be counted? And what did the Washington Post do? The Washington Post sided with the Republicans. Now it's probably clearer to all of us what the hell maybe was going on there. At the time I was scratching my head thinking, what the hell is the Washington Post saying that Bob Casey shouldn't have all the ballots counted in Pennsylvania before he concedes? But here we are, with the legacy media doing its thing. And meanwhile, here it's January and you've got the state Supreme Court in North Carolina doing this.
See, for those keeping track at home, counting all of the ballots is bad, but eliminating 60,000 ballots because they didn't fall in your favor, that's apparently A-OK as far as the Republicans and legacy media who does their bidding are concerned. Marc, let's finish off with this. Where do we stand in terms of having this case hop from the state court system? And state court system is obviously a very, very conservative Republican majority in the North Carolina State Supreme Court, which is already tilting its hand in Republicans' favor just by virtue of doing this, into the federal court system, where at least we're not guaranteed some far-right hackish bench who would preside over this case.
So that's exactly right. Look, the North Carolina State Board of Elections, which is the defendant in this, filed what's called a notice of removal, which means they move it from state court to federal court. The conservative Republican federal judge denied that removal, said, no, this case belongs back in state court. That is now up on appeal to the Fourth Circuit. And so we will see what the Fourth Circuit says. The Fourth Circuit reversed a prior conservative judge ruling to kick another case that they're the first effort by the Republicans in North Carolina to get this before the state Supreme Court. So let's hope the Fourth Circuit does that here. Full disclosure, my law firm represents interveners in these cases to try to protect these who are part of the 60,000, right? I mean, these voters don't want to have their votes thrown out. Yeah. And so stay tuned, because the fight's not over, and this may yet wind up in federal court. And what's interesting is, like I said, the Republicans don't believe that they can win in federal court even before a conservative Trump appointee. They feel like it's either they get this to their state Supreme Court or they have lost. And that tells you a lot about what they think about the merits of their own case.
Well, look, earlier in this episode, you had asked the question, where the hell is legacy media in all of this? And I think that's exactly the right question. And you have been beating the drum about this case, not just by virtue of your work with the interveners, but also through Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet you founded to focus on everything voting elections. You have covered this issue extensively, as it deserves to be covered. So for those who are watching right now, if you want to continue following along and getting up-to-date news as soon as it breaks, please make sure to subscribe. I'll put the link to Democracy Docket right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.